Hi, welcome back to the Blessed Bonds podcast. Today I have Reef Colman on. Reef, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hey, yeah, my name is Reef Colman. I'm the founder and CEO of WeAssist.io. Um, and yeah, I'm Uruguayan. I was born and raised in Uruguay, South America. I love traveling around the world, surfing, and I'm currently in Scottsdale, Arizona. Thanks for having me on, Rose. You're
Oh,
awesome.
yeah, absolutely. So my first question is I kind of just want you to tell us your story and how did Reef become who Reef is today?
Wow, that's a deep question. First, I want to edify you. Just having a a podcast at your age and out here absolutely crushing it is incredible. I can just imagine in 5 years how much content you'll have and how many great stories and conversations
Right.
and partnerships you'll have. So good on you and great kudos. Yeah, very impressed. Very, very impressed. Yeah, a lot of people talk about doing things and you're taking massive action, which is a huge part of entrepreneurship. So great job and good on you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Um, Let me see my story. What do you want to know about my story?
Yeah, just start wherever when because you had talked about this when we were on our call a few weeks ago. And so run away kind of like that, how you did that. Just how did you become who you are today, the little parts, the big parts impacted you?
Yeah, that's a great question. Let me see. Uh, I think I think what has made Reef has been a culmination of my mom and her hard work and ethics, and the wonderful people I've had around me. Um, I'd say that I think we're all kind of this beautiful layered stack of the people who have impacted our lives.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely.
and I think once you start to take note of those people and find the gratitude in what they've done, you'll be able to do a lot, because then you can look back and say thank you to all those people in gratitude. Be grateful. Um, Let me see. Some of the more defining characteristics or defining things that have made me being smuggled into the U.S. when I was 3 by my mom. That was a big deal.
For sure.
We did a lot to get us here. That has always put me in a place of gratitude. Like, because of her, I am where I am today. Otherwise I'd be in another country, maybe starving to death. So,
Right. What would happen if she didn't bring you over? Your life would be so much different.
I know, I think about it all the time. And then when you see Uruguay, you're like, not as entrepreneurial. Still, that has its hub, but definitely more opportunity to get lost in the fray there than here, So,
For sure.
very, very powerful. I think getting to the U.S. is a big one. Meeting some incredible friends like Ian Blair, phenomenal human, Austin Blair, and other friends that really showed me that life could be a little different, were such impactful humans in my life. Yeah, I think that has really shaped me, tremendously as a person, to be who I am today, Yeah.
Yeah, that's so cool. Yeah, you talk a lot about being grateful for people, and so I kind of want to go off topic about this, but how has being grateful for people, telling people that you're grateful for them, how has that impacted you in your life?
Oh, great question. I think gratitude is a superpower.
Oh
I
yeah,
think
absolutely.
I think yeah, I think gratitude, the attitude of gratitude, is a posture of the heart that really makes you look at the world from not a victim stance.
Mhm.
I think a
Yeah.
lot of people tend to choose the path of victimhood, like, oh, I just saw my buddy's podcast, and he was saying on his podcast how, people wouldn't listen to him. And because people wouldn't listen to him, that kind of ignited him to try to do something on his own, and even that comes from a place of victimhoodness, because
Yeah.
instead of iterating, I at the time didn't have the chops or the communication pathways to be able to express myself to leadership in a way that they would understand. I found myself frustrated and ended up trying to do it on my own, on the journey of self, So I find that, gratitude is a great place to remove victim scripting and have ownership scripting. And then also it just makes the world a much better place for your mind,
Absolutely.
You're just looking at gratitude through all places, like everything that happens to us, I say this often. I don't think God does anything without purpose. And I think all the things that happen for us are all part of a gratitude, they're for us, So when
Mhm.
something happens, even though in the moment you're like, oh, why? If you find
Yep.
the gratitude in it, you'll really be able to say, this was what was supposed to happen. Now, what am I supposed to learn from this? Why is this for my future? Why is this here for me? And if
Yeah,
you have that stance or that posture of the heart consistently, then you train your brain into thinking, oh, these are all things happening for me rather than against me, you know?
for
So
sure.
gratitude is a great reframe. Just every moment you can, finding the gratitude in something is super. And in the most remedial things,
Mhm.
waking up, you know, being able to brush your hair, brush your teeth, you know, like just to be able to walk outside, you know, the little things that we take for granted on a daily basis, you know, you find gratitude in those things on a daily basis, and your life is just painted that much more bright. Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I feel like every time like if I get out of bed, like go to the gym, or like when the alarm goes off to go to the gym and it's like 5 a.m. and I'm like, I don't want to do this. I'm like, I'm not gonna do it. I'm not gonna get up. I'm gonna stay in bed and like, nope, not doing it. And then I've stopped because like I used to like put like think about motivational quotes and I was like, well, nothing changes if nothing changes, and I make it all about me. And
Yeah.
then recently I was like, somebody else is laying in a hospital bed wishing that they could get up and go into the gym, and I was like, go to the gym. And so I get up and I'm like, I'm not. So some days I'm doing it for me, and then some days I'm doing it for somebody else because I know that they can't. And I think finding that gratitude and like somebody else can't, and so I'm gonna be like, thank you God for letting me be able to.
Amen. Amen. Oh, first off, good job. 5 a.m. going to the gym. Holy cannoli. Yeah. That is, I started that in my later life. I wish I would have done that from a way younger age. Yeah, you know, I think you hit it right on the head in the sense that it's all for you at the end of the day.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah,
it's all for you. How you trick your brain into achieving is an interesting game to play. It's like chess with your own mind, you know?
right.
Something I tell people, like, you know, you get up in the morning and you wake up and you hear the alarm go off and you're like, I'm gonna snooze it. And you're like, okay. And then you say to yourself, you know, you should wake up now because you know if you snooze it, it's not gonna be a good day, you know?
Mhm.
And then you tell yourself, no, you know what? Just 5 more minutes, 10 more minutes. If I do 10 minutes, you know, I can maybe shower later. And you know, if I get all the green lights, I shave off 2 minutes, you know, hopefully I get on the green lights. I go, no, you know what happens when you know, I digress, right? Well, who are you talking to? You know, it's like
Yeah.
yourself. You're having this self talk the entire time. And I think if more people realize that they had this self conversation going on with the higher and lower consciousness of self, you know, kind of like the prefrontal cortex or the frontal lobe that kind of parents our brain, you know, if we understood the power of that conversation and how to respectfully treat ourselves and talk to ourselves with love, kindness, you know, I think the more that someone figures that out, then the easier it is to navigate life, right? Because then you end up having these very positive conversations with yourself and telling yourself that you are capable, you know, that things are possible. So getting up at like at 5 a.m. is a great example of that. And then learning that conversation allows you to tie back that it's all for you at the end of the day, right?
Mhm.
It's all for the betterment of you. Just how are you going to work with your brain to achieve that? So for you, it seems like, you know, comparing yourself to the opportunity of others not being able to is helpful. It does. That's the same for me. I'm like, oh, someone else can't. I should, you know? So that
I like
really,
put myself in other people's shoes and like, okay, what is their position in life? Okay, I need to be more grateful for all the little things. Like, yeah, getting out of bed, waking up in the morning. And I remind myself a lot, like if I have a really bad day and like I wake up and I'm like, I don't want to do this. Like I don't want to work. And I'm like, I don't want to do a podcast. Sometimes the enemy will be like, Rose, don't do a podcast. You don't really want to do it. Like all these things. And I'm like, it's an opportunity that God gave me. And so
amen.
why would I be like, God, I don't want it. You can have it back. I don't want it anymore. I
Yeah.
wanted it. Like I prayed about it. I asked you for this and now I don't want it.
Yes.
Like that doesn't make sense. I asked, like I put that alarm, I turned that alarm on, and I was like, God, when I wake up in the morning, please help me be refreshed and like do work all this stuff. And the alarm goes off, and God gives you the opportunity. And
Amen.
so I'm like, God, I want discipline. And He's like, okay, then you're gonna have to discipline yourself. He'll give
Mhm.
you the opportunities, but you have to do it yourself. And that's a big thing I think that people don't really understand. Is they're like, well, why didn't God give me patience or discipline and that kind of stuff? It's like, well, He put you through a trial, and you either failed or you didn't. And it's like you get to choose that. And I feel like you talk about it a lot is like your brain and yourself, because a lot of people like have problems with their like self and they don't like themselves.
Mm.
And Trent Shelton, I love Trent Shelton. Do you know who Trent Shelton is?
Not familiar.
He spoke at FHL the first day.
Send me his link after this. Kate will bring it up to me. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I'd
But
love to
yeah,
see.
Trent Shelton's like my favorite person like ever. And he's so cool. And I've heard him speak so many times and he talks a lot about like yourself. Like you have peace with yourself. And I think a lot of that like is with boundaries. And so I was gonna ask you, like, what boundaries have you like set with yourself, like the world, so that you like don't get hurt by the people, you don't get affected by other people's like negativity? Because I can
Mm,
tell you're like a very positive person. It's like, what boundaries have you been able to like set so that nobody else's like negativity hurts you?
wow. Uh, I'm taking notes here so I could bring these up and and respond to them. First one that I think you mentioned, which is very powerful. Reminder that last year's prayers are this year's blessings, and being so careful with that to make sure that you don't turn them into curses. I think a lot of people pray for something and pray and pray. Like I prayed to have a life of travel, an adventure, and be able to surf in different worlds and I think I clocked like 187 hours flying last year,
So cool.
which is like over a week.
Yeah, that's so
Of flying in the air. I was in the air like a bird.
yeah,
Uh, but at some times I'd find myself like, oh, I got to pack again. I got to do this. And you just have to really realign yourself to remind yourself, like, my prayers of last year or of 10 years ago or 5 years ago are today's blessings.
absolutely.
Really be careful in not turning them into curses and being like, okay, remember the gratitude of this moment.
Right.
So that's hyper important. So that posture of the mind and the heart are super important, because it's easy for the brain to go. I think the brain thinks 80% negative, 20% positive. So you really have to catch that self-talk. So sometimes you'll find yourself kind of slipping into, and you gotta be like, oh, kind of pull yourself out of it.
Yeah.
And there's no one else to pull you out. Like, you wake up with you every day, 100, you're with yourself 365 days a year. You really have to be prepared to like be there for yourself. The most important relationship on this planet, besides the one of you and God, like the only physical relationship, is one between you and yourself. You figure that relationship out, and it makes everything wonderful. You said do it for yourself, right? And yourself, and a lot about yourself. I think the part of self is, God really does talk a lot about our discernment, decision making. Like, he gives us a great decision making matrix if we really read scripture carefully. And what he's really, I think, in a lot of ways trying to tell us is that we are able to have choice. The choice is such a big word. It's such a big word that we could choose to have him or choose not to have him. Just alone saying that, to be able to take yourself off the table, onto the table completely of his servitude and love, gives us the opportunity to realize that we have choice over everything around us. And that word choice is really powerful. I think the most important thing we can do is create a really good decision-making matrix for how we discern, how we move forward, how we make choices. Like, one of my rules is, how are our inputs today going to impact the next 2, 5, or 10 generations? Simple rule, but it helps me really realign. Like, when I do something, I'm like, is this going to be good for the next generation or bad for the next generation? And just that simple yes or no allows me to keep, walking forward. So those are those 2 points. And I think the last one that you asked was boundaries of self, right? To stay happy. Is that the last one? I think. Yeah. Okay. I want to make sure I'm tracking with you. And
You're good.
I'm keeping up
Sorry,
with
I
you.
go like a lot of places when I'm talking.
Oh, great. Don't worry about it. It's good. My job is just kind of catch the thoughts,
Yeah.
Wow, what a great question. So what keeps me so happy and so go lucky and moving forward is kind of like the whole thing, right? And how do I guard against the enemy, or guard against negative people, or bad commentary, etc., right? I think a good way to frame this is, it goes back to self again. Okay. I think a person is 100% in control of their reaction, their response to anything that comes their way. Have you ever heard someone say, that person hurt me, or that guy hurt my feelings? Have you ever heard someone say that?
For sure. Yeah.
Okay, cool. My belief is that doesn't exist. No one else can hurt us externally.
Right. You let.
Boom. Oh, girl. Yes, Rose. Let's go.
Yeah.
You let them. Now, that's an easy thing said rather than done, right? So how do you work that framework? Well, simple. We have to recognize, and it's all about empathy. If there's anything else that I believe we need to have, is empathy at the highest level. So say somebody says something, right? And it comes in our ears, and we're like, Well, there's a little frame that it passes through, like a little filter. And that filter then goes into the brain that gives us a reaction or action, like a chemical reaction. Sometimes anxiety, tightness of the chest, can't breathe as much, all these little things that happen, or anger, like we flood red, there's a lot of blood to the head. It's trying to catch those things that come in that make us feel a certain chemical reaction or emotional reaction are the things we can start listing out and asking why of those things, and then working backwards from them, recognizing that no one else except for self can inflict damage on self. So if that is true, why do I inflict damage upon myself when these things come up? What's at the underlying root of those things? I think understanding that we are this beautiful culmination of past experiences. Imagine our brain is like a cake, and there's one layer and then another layer and then another layer. And some layers have really sweet frosting, but some have a little bit of a bitter or tart frosting, and others have sweet frosting. And then you kind of keep layering on top this beautiful cake that is our mind, when you cut through it and you take a bite, sometimes you might get a bitter bite, sometimes you might get a sweet bite, right? Well, those layers are the frames or the lenses that we see the world through. So when something affects us or enters our mind, we see it through that frame, like subjectively, not always objectively. So it's really important to catch that frame. Tell me if I'm going, is this like too...
No, I'm getting what you're saying.
Yeah, okay, cool. So now we take it back to the boundaries, right? Understanding that when something comes in, it affects us. Well, no matter who the person is or how they come into our life, the more we can guard against different types of humans, the better equipped we are to face life. So handicapping ourselves and guarding ourselves against everybody is not necessarily great, but learning how to respond or react to different type of people and be cautious of those types of people, very good. So I think that's super helpful. The other part would be, not putting yourself into a place long-term enough around a certain demographic of people that it becomes a behavioral pattern of yours as well, because you're very susceptible to behavioral patterns. So if you hang out with a bunch of people that drink and party, you'll drink and party. If you hang out with a bunch of people that speak poorly about others, you'll start speaking poorly about others. So really discern who you want to be in the future, what kind of human being you want to be, the lifestyle you want, and surround yourself around those types of people, and that'll give you a much more fruitful path.
Yeah, when you just said that, I was writing something down because I had seen something one time, and I'm a big fan of quotes. Like that is like one thing about me is I love quotes. Like I'm writing a book right now. I'm like almost done. I'm in like the editing phase because I already wrote a book, and I actually have it next to me. It's called Better Believe It, and so I wrote this book. It's a 30-day devotional.
Wow.
That's and then awesome. I'm writing another book right now that is 365 quotes for teen entrepreneurs because I love quotes. Like and there was this quote I had seen, and it was like, you hang out with you hang out with two partiers, you'll become the third.
Yeah.
You hang out with two drinkers, you'll become the third.
Yeah.
You hang out with two gossipers, you'll become the third. And that's really like stuck with me, is that the people you surround yourself with matter. Mm-hmm. And like yourself, you matter. I think that's a really important thing to think about a lot, is the person you're alone with. And Trent Shelton also talked about this. He's like, do you like the person you're alone with? And that gets hard.
Yeah, that's a quote of the day. That's a good one.
You like who you're alone with. And I like to go back to like looking at last summer. If I would have been by myself, I tried to fill like all of my life with a bunch of friends. Like every weekend I was like with friends. Like every day I was with friends. I was like, I need to be with people. I need to be with people. I need to be with people. And then kind of towards the fall, I was a swimmer, and I've been swimming for like 10 years. And I chose in like December to quit swimming. And that was like a really hard like decision for me. And I kind of knew I was going to like quit swim in like...
Why did you decide to quit swimming?
Yeah, so I loved it so much. So it's a long story, but in like last year around this time, I was obsessed with swim. Like everything that people knew about me was swim. Like someone would be like, oh, there's Rose, she's a swimmer. That was the first thing that came to their mind when they thought of Rose. And that kind of made, like, I was like, oh, yeah, you think of me as this and this. And, like, I read my Bible. I would highlight everything. Like, people thought I was, like, this perfect little Christian girl. And I became injured. I was, like, messing around playing basketball, and I tore a tendon in my ankle. And I didn't know, like, how bad that was because I got x-rays. They told me it was not broken. So I went a month of still training. And then I did another race, and I tore it again. And I was like, okay, fine. So I was like, I see, God, that you want me to stop. And so I took a break because I was like healing, and I realized that there was more to my identity than just swim. And like I didn't want people. Hold on, I think you got paused. Oh, you're back, okay. But I didn't want people to just see me as a swimmer. Like I didn't want my whole identity to be, oh, she's a swimmer. And
Mm,
so I was like, what am I going to do about this? Because that's not going to work for me. Because they don't see me as that's a child of God. They don't see me as a God fearing person. They see me as a swimmer. But that's not going to matter when I get to heaven. So I totally changed my viewpoint on that career part. And I'm so glad that I became injured. Like nowadays, I look back at it, I'm like, I'm so happy that happened because I was able to go to Mexico and we did like, we were there for Unlock the Secrets and I was able to go to FHL, like all these things like lined up. And so
wow.
I was like, thank you, God, for that. I appreciate that. That's very kind of you. But yeah, so I quit swim because, and then I swam in the summer, I swam like fall, and I was realizing that I didn't love it like I did before. And I
Mm,
didn't want to spend my life doing something I didn't love. And I mean, I still love it and I still miss it, but I think that sometimes you miss things because it was a pattern. And that was a pattern in my life is every day I would do that. I would
wow.
get up at 5 a.m. and I would go to swim and I would get home, I would do school, I would leave at 4 and I get home at 8. Like it was a pattern, it was my life. And I was like, maybe this isn't what God's calling me to do. And I
Mm,
was praying and praying because I had been trying to decide this for months and months and I was praying. And I was like, God, I don't know what you want me to do. Like, do you want me to keep swimming or stop swimming? And I listen to music sometimes when I pray, like worship music,
that's
and
good.
the song playing, like it started like playing right as I was talking to God at the moment, and it was a song from his name's Christian Paul, and it was like sometimes you have to know when to walk away, and I burst into tears, and I was like, okay. And this song is like now like I love this song because it's like when you walk by like you walk by the line, you walk by faith. Sometimes you have to know when to walk away.
Amen.
And I was like, okay, I'm done. And I was praying about it again. I was talking to God, and I was like, what should I actually do? Because I was like, fine, I'll take a break. I'll take a break. You know,
Sure.
like we talk about it, like, okay, fine, God, I'll take a
Yeah, it's a
break.
timeout. It's a timeout. It's not like a real quit. It's just like I'll walk away. I'll be back. Yeah.
Okay. And so my grandma passed away in the beginning of January. And
Shoot.
so we had her funeral. And this was like, so all these things were like crumbling on me at the same time. But I
Yeah.
remember I didn't feel like a whole lot of stress. Like I had just like, my best friend was my best friend and she and I got separated. And I was like, okay, well, that's hard. And then
Mm,
I was like, okay, I'm quitting swim at the same time. It was just like all these things. And I remember it was the night of my grandma's funeral. And I went down to the pool and I was just like sitting in the pool. I had like my AirPod in, so I wasn't going to go underwater. I was just like sitting in the pool and nobody else was in there and I was just started praying and I was like, what do I do? Like what do you want me to do? And
amen.
I just felt this like piece of like just let it go.
Mm,
I was like, you just need to be done. And I called one of my friends and I was like, what do I do? And she said, it was so hard for me to hear this because she was like, Rose, sometimes things have to come to an end because God doesn't need you there anymore.
wow.
And I was like, okay. And it was really hard because, you love something so much and you're like, that was my life. That was everything to me. And
Your
that was
identity. It
the
was
problem,
everything. Yeah.
that it
Yeah.
was everything and God wasn't everything. And
Mm,
so it was a hard, like, little decision to make, but I've never, like, been happier. And I think that's hard because I seemed so happy then when
yeah.
really it was, like, tearing me apart. And I would come home and I'd cry every night because I was like, I'm not getting better. I don't know. I love this, but it's hurting me because
Yeah.
I loved swim, but I just had, like, the conviction over my heart as that this is not what God's calling me to do.
Mm,
And so, but it's cool to look back because I've like helped grow so many people, like their relationship with Christ, like in that area.
yeah.
And I was like, okay, I did what I needed to do, and now it's time for me to do something else. So that's like a
Yeah.
long story of all of that, but
No, it's good. I mean, I think that there's so many different places to serve the kingdom, and then how you operate. It's more of a way of walking and talking and acting within the world.
yeah,
I think you could do it at any place, and sometimes you're called to do it in a different way or a different format.
yeah,
Maybe it's at one point you were there in swim, and you were a great example for other people that maybe you never know how your walk is impacting someone else's walk.
oh my gosh,
Just by
yes,
you operating, by you being you, and someone seeing you as an example and going, oh, wow,
hmm
and then sparking that conversation of that self, right?
yeah,
Which is so good. And it's a huge gift that you got to feel that sensation of letting go is okay, because I think that's one of the biggest gifts God can give you when you sit in prayer long enough and you just like there's just this like storm in the mind, and then you feel this peace of
yeah.
it's
That's so
good, and you're like, okay, Okay, thank you. You know, I can walk forward, you know. Yeah, and I think it's kind of interesting, right? Because I think we are behavioral patterns, you know,
Mm, yeah,
as humans, you know, as these like creatures on Earth, like we tend to be we tend to live life in pattern as much as like the brain doesn't know the difference between, you know, safety and danger. It doesn't know sharp and soft or fluffy, you
right.
know. It knows pattern as safety. So
Sorry.
you can actually, you know, hear the pattern, and even though the pattern might not be healthy, your brain will keep going back to that pattern because it thinks that pattern is safety, you know. So
Right.
breaking past those patterns is fairly difficult. But if you can do that, if you can achieve that mentally and break past a pattern, then you can create a beautiful it's like challenge yourself constantly, you know, like
Yeah.
this is
Every day. Like,
it. I think a good way of looking at life is like you are not your behavioral patterns. You know,
mm,
we identify so much with you're a late person. No, I have a behavior of being late, you know,
yeah.
or
You
like
can change that at any point.
correct, you know, or you're a swimmer. No, I enjoy swimming. Swimming is an activity that I do, you know. Like we put something behind our name and we are that, you know. And it's like, no, not necessarily. This is just something that I care to do, or maybe something I don't care to do that I'm trying to fix and replace, but it's not me, it's
Right.
not my identity. I can replace that, I can fix that, I can better that, you know. I think that's yeah, I think that's a incredibly important to note for a lot of people that you are not your behavioral patterns, you know.
Mm,
You are a beautiful human being that God made you to be, you know. That's like the person that you are at your core. Everything else is just velcroed onto you. You could choose to remove it, choose to replace it, you know.
right.
You can behaviorally work it away, you know. I'm very big on self. Like a lot of, you know, you are in charge of self, and all the things that you do in your life come back to you. Total ownership, you know.
Oh yeah. You have
um,
to own up to who, like, what you do and those kind of things.
100%, 100%. Yeah. um, but yeah, 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 that's
Yeah. I have like something I was gonna go into. Oh, is that you're talking about like hearing what God has to say, and there's a quote that I love. I'm like taking notes. I'm not just like texting people.
good. Same. I'm here with you too. Yeah,
And it said, I was like, it probably looks like I'm here like texting, but no.
yeah.
I was like, I don't
Oh,
really
that'd be so funny on a podcast. Like, what are you doing?
like, sorry, hold on, I'm busy. But yeah. So this quote, it says, "It's hard to hear what God's trying to say when you've already decided what He's going to say."
Oof.
And that was really big for me because I was like, "Oh God, you want me to stay and swim?" I knew it, and it's like, no, it's
Yeah.
not what I'm telling you. And I think what you were talking about when you just sit in prayer long enough and you just let Him talk, and you just I'm saying this in the kindest way I can. You just shut up and let Him talk, and be like, just chill out. And be like, okay, what do you have to say to me? I
Mm.
think that's super important.
Yeah,
But
I think that you know, I enjoy a lot of classical music and a lot of peace and quiet. Like sometimes I remember being I was doing um, uh, volcano hike at Acatatatenango in Guatemala. You know, it's an active volcano. It was 13,080 feet. And we were hiking, and people had music blaring in front of me, and they were blasting it. And I was like, hey, can I fall behind a little bit? I just want to be in peace and quiet and listen to nature, you know? Because
yeah,
there's something about the calm and peace of just being you, yourself, your thoughts, nature, and God that is just like, you know, beautiful, I think. It's like that. I think it's when you get some of the most interesting moments of clarity where we have so much noise pollution coming in, you
yeah,
know, how about just some beauty and quiet, you know, of what you have around
right,
you. And I find those like meditative states very beautiful, you know, they're like the most powerful in my opinion.
for sure.
And surrounding yourself in those is like really good. Yeah. I,
Yeah,
yeah, I find a lot of solace in that, you know. um, yeah.
it's a cool part about traveling. I love traveling. My goal for like this year, and so I'm 15 right now, so I still have a lot of like I could have a lot of time. We never know. But in like the aspect of
Wow, that was so deep, but yeah, you're right. But
in the
you do have a lot
aspect
of
of
time. Yeah,
things,
yeah,
I
yeah.
have a lot of time, but we don't know.
God willing, you have a lot of time. Yes, yeah.
And I'm like, but like in the aspect of like life, as I
Yeah, correct.
have a lot of time, and I'm like trying to figure out what I want to do with my life because
Mm,
it's a hard thing as a teenager. That's hard because you have all these like voices and people are like, oh, what are you gonna do? Where are you gonna go to college? All these things, and I think that's hard for a lot of people. But for me, I'm like, hey, it's my decision. Like at that point, it's
yeah,
like it's me and God, and I'm gonna figure out what I need to do.
Always your decision. Yeah.
And that's like, and what we were talking about choices, I want to go back on that.
Okay.
But so I was like, wait, I know what I was going to talk about earlier. Yeah, so choices. And okay, so I want to talk about choices. So I wrote a paper. I'm homeschooled, and I my mom had like asked questions like the end of the school year, and it was just kind of like random questions. And I am the kind of person that they'll ask a question, and then I'll go off on like a whole rant. It's kind of like there's like it has a part of the question in it, but it's also like totally random. And so
That's
she
good.
gets like all these like this whole she gives like a paragraph area to like write it, and then
Okay.
there's like a blank page on the other side, and I'm like filling the whole thing. Like
Oh,
I love writing, and she's like, "What is this?" And all the other kids are done in like 10 minutes, and I'm still like in there for like an hour, and I'm like, "I have a whole like book for you," and she's like, "Thanks, can't wait to read." And
good.
I'm like so grateful. She like sits down and like reads it, and I'm not just like, "I did it."
Yeah, that's very beautiful. Other parents might be like, meh," but
Yeah,
that's so good that someone takes the time. Yeah.
yeah. She read it, and she was like, "That was really good. Thank
Good.
you."
Good.
And but yeah, so I was talking about choices, and I was like, everything in your life is based off of a choice you made.
Mm,
Like every little thing is a choice you made. Like you're afraid to be like talk to that person. Well, that's a choice that you made. And
correct.
like those like little things. And so how has that like impacted your life? Like choices, like we talked about that earlier. How
Mm,
has making different choices impacted your life? Because you had talked on like the call about how you were a little bit different than you are now when you were in like your teen years.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so
Very.
how has like making different choices changed to where you are now?
Yeah. Yeah. I like talking to youth very raw,
Mhm.
because I think that, a lot of times people sugarcoat things and they don't give, people the reality of what life really is. Like high school is hard, teenage years are hard. You have a lot of decisions to make. And you're right. The decision is yours at the end of the day. The goal is to align your life with where you want to go. And if someone would have given me that a long time ago instead of the now and that instant moment, would have been very different.
Yeah.
I think that we are all responsible for self at the end
Mm.
of the day. Like God put us on this planet, we're here, we happened, we're there now. Like now it's up to us. He puts us here and he goes, okay, here's the map that you have, the game board. Now play it, please. I hope I've done good by bringing you on this planet. Um, so I'd say choices are incredibly important. We are nothing more than a culmination of choices and decisions, and we're one decision away from, hurting ourselves, or one decision away from, forever projecting ourselves into the future. Propelling ourselves into the future. Um, so I'd say learning how to make good decisions or good choices is really good. Have what's called the litmus test. Litmus test is yes, no. Like on, off, yes, no switches. Have a series of questions that you ask yourself. Like mine is obviously how is this going to impact our future generations in a good way or bad way, positively or negative? That's a very simple one for me, but is this helping me get closer to my goals? Yes or no? Is this helping me create better relationships with people around me? Yes or no? So you have these litmus tests that you can ask yourself to get the decisions and choices. That's going to be a little controversial. So I'm going to throw it in here, right?
Yeah.
I'm so about choices and decisions and ownership that I actually do not give negative thoughts, sin to the enemy, and positive to God. It's all God's at the end of the day. I think. I don't even allow room for the enemy. Like it's just all God helping me create a better me. And I take full ownership over all my decisions and all my choices, the good ones that I make and the bad ones. Right? Because I find that if I say something like, "Oh, that was the enemy," attacking me, then I'm not really asking myself, why was I choosing that? Why did I want to go down that route? And actually doing the introspection that I need to maybe unroot that negative pattern or bad behavior to then better it. So for me, it's so much ownership in self to make the world a better place that I'm asking myself, if I do a really good decision, good on you, Reef. You did a good job there.
Yeah.
If I make a poor choice, I don't believe in losing. I believe in W and L's,
Mhm.
winning and learning. So it's
Yeah.
like, okay, what do I have to learn from this? And then I take that and apply it to a lesson in my life to keep growing and going forward. I think choices, your matrix for choosing, making choices or decisions is so important that it's one thing that you should focus on more than anything. If I would have gotten that as a tool as a teenager, holy cannoli, what would my life be today?
Yeah.
I wasn't taught that, so I kept making a lot of mistakes. And I also wasn't taught that our brains are behavioral patterns.
Mhm.
So example for me, I kept falling into this negative pattern of behavior over and over again.
Mhm.
And for a long time, I blamed my abusive fathers that had come into my life, and I was like, oh, my dads were abusive and that's why I come out this way. And this is why, I cry so loudly. I used to be a big crier, crybaby. Okay, here I am, Reef, crybaby. Got it. Okay, cool. I used to just like emoting. It was called being loud of my emotions,
Yeah,
Why me, Huh?
it's okay. Everybody, it's okay. There's different people. Different people have different ways to show their emotions. So
Right. But I didn't like I didn't like it in me in the sense that it would, hijack the emotions. The emotions would
yeah,
hijack me. So I wouldn't be Reef anymore. I'd be like this, like like being very loud
yeah.
to try to get attention, essentially.
Mhm.
So I went and did this wonderful emotional regulation behavioral repatterning program with Busy Gold. Shout out to her. She's amazing. Works with high level CEOs, youth teens, everybody, you name it. She's done amazing work. She tests your brain and then gives you like a whole protocol and like questions you should ask yourself to work out of situations. Cool, I digress. So one of the things that I learned through that process was that it wasn't actually, my abusive fathers that gave me the negative pattern behavioring, which was crazy. It was actually the love for my grandma, my mom, and my uncle, because they saw that I had such a hard life with my fathers that they try to overcompensate by giving me everything I wanted and needed, not allowing me to emotionally regulate self. So they didn't teach me how to emotionally regulate, but rather they, it just kind of appeased me at all times. So when hard emotions came, I didn't have the tools strong enough to sit down and just manage that emotion when it came in. So I think, yeah, going back to your choices and decisions, I think a big choice or decision was for me to make was figure out, where does this negative pattern come from? How can I undo this negative pattern? Because it doesn't matter, how much I love God or pray or I'm there and I'm sitting. If I keep doing these negative patterns, it won't be good for my future family.
Absolutely.
Like if I run out of the house or if I get really sad and cry and I leave for a few days, like it doesn't matter what that is. Those are things I need to work on in self, and God gives me the power to work on self. Like that's really where I stand with that. Yeah.
Yeah,
That was
that's it.
a good answer. Sorry. That was like,
That's amazing. That's awesome. And that kind of brought me into like the next part. I want to talk about patterns again because so patterns like really important. I feel like when did you hear Tony Robbins speak? Were you there that night?
yeah.
Yeah. And that was such a cool. I have like 10 pages of notes. I'm a note taker. I love notes. But
Good.
and
Takers are leaders. Yeah.
and I was just like I was listening to him, and it really hit me about the patterns because your brain it does take in all the patterns, negative and positive. And going back to what you had said earlier about like how you like let people hurt you and you let people affect you.
Mhm.
And so I had like a lot of conversations with like people. It was been like one conversation with one of my friends, and it was when she was like, "Hey, can we talk?" And then I was like, "Yeah, of course." And I'm a big person, like, of course, if we need to talk, like, I'll talk. Like, what's up?
Yeah.
And that conversation ended our friendship, and I didn't know that going into the conversation. And so
Interesting.
I was like, "Okay." And then I had another conversation with someone, and they were like, "Can we talk?" And I was like, "Yeah." And this was like a whole like different. This was maybe like a month later, different, and that also like left like it was a bad ending. And I was
Mhm.
like, so then someone texted me the other day, and they said, "Can we talk?" And there was this like part of me that was like, "No, I don't." I was like,
You're like, no, I don't want to talk to anybody ever again. Every time we have a conversation, it ends. Yeah.
right. And like when they started the conversation with, "Hey, can we talk?" I was like, "Get the phone away from me." And I was like,
Yeah.
"Yeah." And I was, "Of course, yeah, what's up?" And the conversation was like, "It's my business partner." She's like, "Okay, so I got these new prints and I'm like super excited to do that like things." It's like awesome.
Good.
And that pattern though, I realized it while I was sitting there when I like looked at the phone and I saw, "Hey, can we talk?" I was like, "No."
Dread.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that fear. And I was like, wait, I just let that happen to myself. And I'm really talk to myself and I really
Mm.
like myself. And I was like, okay, why did I let that affect me? And I was like, why did I put this fear in my heart that that person was gonna like not like me or not want to talk to me, like all these things? And it was
Great
that
question to ask. Very
right.
good.
I'm like, why am I letting this affect me? What's going on? And so when I responded to that, and I was like, yeah, of course, like I normally respond. And then she was just like talking to me about our business, like all positive things.
Mm.
I realized I was like, you can't let like two, like one or even two, like bad situations cause you to react like angrily like that. Because I could have been like, no, I don't really want to talk right now. I'm busy. I can't.
Mm.
And then that would have pushed her off. I'm like, what's wrong? Like, why are you acting like this? And so you can't let that like trauma or that anger, that sadness build up in you and change the way that you treat somebody else.
Mm.
That's kind of something when you were talking about patterns that I thought of is I was like, because that pattern had started and I was really fearful then. I was like, why is this happening? And then I was feared, and then it was could have like ended badly depending on how you choose to react. And so I was gonna ask you, like, how did you? This question might not come out right, but like, how did you end those bad patterns and like, end those bad things? Because a lot of times we get into that pattern and it gets normal. Like I sometimes snooze my alarm. That's been a big thing for me, like the past month. That I like snooze my alarm like 10 more minutes, 10 more minutes, and then I was like, this is coming into a pattern of every morning. I'm like, okay, I'll just snooze the alarm. It's fine. It's fine. I did it yesterday. It's fine. It doesn't matter. It's fine. And you have to end that pattern. So now I'm like, get out of bed. Just like you set the alarm, get out of bed. And so I was gonna ask you, like, how did you end those like bad patterns and cut those off and start better patterns?
All right. Wow. First off, I love how astute you are and how, you're asking questions of the brain that are phenomenal. They're wonderful to explore, If you had to ask me my 3 favorite places to play, it's the ocean, space, and the brain, because they're the 3 biggest unknowns that we have that we can articulate, And I'm fascinated with all 3 of those realms, The depths of the ocean, we still don't know. Space is a huge frontier. And the brain, I think we only understand like 10% of what the brain is, or 3%, like nominal, we barely, we are barely trying to like scratch the surface, So I think that you're asking phenomenal questions, and it's good to 2 parts. Number one is try to have a mind that's continuously stretching and malleable. So whatever you knew as fact one day is okay to change as a fact the next day if you have enough data to change that, right? So that's number one, because what we knew one day as our reality, as truth, may not be truth the next week. Take, for example, quantum mechanics and physics, the theory of relativity versus quantum mechanics. That theory of relativity was like this was physics. We knew it as all that physics was. And now we're starting to see the quantum world go up, and you're like, whoa, right? There's so much more there. And little that people know is, when the theory of relativity was around with Einstein, quantum mechanics was around as well, but there wasn't the instruments to be able to measure it. So it didn't get as much hype, But then there was people for 80 or 100 years that in a dungeon or in a basement were like crunching the numbers, and people were probably like, you're crazy. And we already figured this out. And like, no, there's more to learn, Those are heroes, because their knowledge based on top of knowledge created what we know today as we're learning and exploring more, So to the unsung heroes, thank you. Like, bless you for your work and your hard works, So always have a mind of being malleable, because you never know, again, what that decision tree is very important, discernment, decision, choice making, etc. What do you take in as knowledge and not knowledge? One of my favorite quotes would have to be, until further data, suspend all judgment. In all areas of life, in emotions, or in the moment you get that text, someone says, hey, we need to talk. Okay, well, it hasn't happened yet, you have to kind of step away from it and say, okay, until further data, suspend all judgment. I don't know what this is about. Go into it with a clean heart, because if you go in it with a preconceived heart, you're going to put emotion onto it that doesn't have to have, and it may change the scope of the conversation. Instead, open heart, I think of the parable of the farmer, the Chinese farmer, where the son comes home, right? And everyone's like, oh, what great news, your son is home. And the farmer goes, maybe, And the next day, they're in the field plowing, and he breaks his leg. The son breaks his leg, and everybody goes, oh, what misfortune, he's broken his leg. And the farmer goes, maybe. And then the last day, they're coming in drafting for war, and since his leg is broken, they don't draft him, and they go, oh, what great fortune, he won't be drafted, surely he won't die. And the farmer says, maybe. That's a perfect example of not putting emotion onto something that you don't know the outcome of yet. Like, we don't know what's going to happen in the future. We only know the now, and we get to choose if we put a negative emotion or a positive emotion to something now. Exactly. So the moment something comes in, you can put it through that frame and go, and you did wonderfully. What I love that you did is you asked yourself, why did I feel that? Because I've heard this 2 times before. That's interesting. Is this going to happen again potentially? You don't know. And kind of suspending. Right. Best way to, I think, work backwards from that is really reminding yourself, until further data, suspend all judgment, and not to put emotion on something that hasn't yet happened.
I'm going to write that down. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'll let you do that there. But it is important to what you said. Learn with discernment. Over time, you do have these things that happen in a pattern, and you should discern with those things. Example, if you see someone playing on the edge of a cliff, and they're too close to the cliff, they fall off and die. That's an obvious. You should set your fence 10 feet away, right? Bible talks a lot about that. Making sure that you have a safeguard against the dangers of the edge of the cliff, right? So that's important. Discerning, like, hey, these are negative behaviors that I definitely don't want to surround myself with, and put distance between those. You're always going to put yourself in a much cleaner path. Life's already hard. There's already a lot of friction to life. Try to make it as frictionless as possible, like go smooth, that way when friction does happen, you're like, I can do this, let me see. And then you said about patterns and how, there's a great book for hard conversations. There's Never Split the Difference. Highly recommend. Great read. And then The Perfect Day Formula is really good for articulating what a great day is for you, and in doing that, you can really find the patterns. You're like, when am I most proud of myself? And start writing those things down. Am I proud of myself when I snooze or don't snooze? Am I proud of myself when I gym or don't gym? Like, am I most proud of myself when, and then what would your future self be most proud of?
Oh yeah.
You can't think of it in the moment, like, or how am I best honoring God or my family, family I'd be careful with, because then that could take you down to living for someone else and not for self. But I think, centering to God, you and yourself and your future, you're like, okay, these are things that I would be happy with in my future self, that I think I could align with, So taking inventory of those things, do it for, I forget how many days it says. The book says it well. I think it's like a month. You just put a sheet or on your phone, just start taking inventory of the things that you like. And then after each day, start a new note or just tab it and then keep going down. And then you can put that in a Google Sheet and then see which items you do that make you feel most accomplished at night. You ever go to bed sometimes at night and you're like, oh, what did I do today?
Yeah.
Today sucked. And then you have other nights where you go to bed and you're like, I crushed today. I absolutely got after it. Those are the days that you want to take inventory and kind of check mark or highlight green. These are the activities that make me feel really good when I go to bed and make me feel very accomplished. Then you can create your perfect day formula. You'll know exactly what steps you need to take to do every day in order to create that inner sensation of value, self-worth, growth, greatness, as you're going through life. So you can impact the world in a much better place, or a much better way. So that's what I would say about taking inventory. So take inventory of those things. How to end the negative patterns, that's great. Busy Gold really helped me out wonderfully with this. We kind of have like a 3 series to our brain, right? And I might botch this. I'll get an intro with her. She's awesome. Faith-based, wonderful leader, great, works with high-level CEOs. Like, love her to pieces, like Reese's, she's really the one that made me grow a much closer relationship with God. And I love her for that. Like, without her, I don't know what that relationship would be like, still, it's just much stronger. Like, I just have that, that passion and belief that he's here with me at all times. But you have kind of something happens and you have a reactionary response. Then you have like the second layer of reactionary responses you're processing. And then you have the actual action reactionary response. So there's like 3 layers to how we process an action, So in order to end those patterns, you have to catch it at the very beginning, like as soon as you feel that come in, write it down. Like, oh, I'm feeling this. Why? Okay, how do I work that backwards? A good question to ask yourself is like, is this an assumption or is this reality? But with yours, you had said, I read the text. Hey,
I'm sorry, my dogs might bite for a second.
That's okay.
Sorry.
Not puppers. You heard the quote, we need to talk. And immediately you got this feeling. Was that an assumption or reality? Was this really happening to you, or were you assuming what you thought was going to happen in the conversation? So the moment you can ask yourself that and go, this is an assumption, you can then like suspend it because it's not really happening, even though the body makes it feel like it is actually happening.
Right.
And then another series of questions, like, have I experienced this before? Has this ever happened to me before? And like, should I, how should I act on this? Like you have a series of questions that you can work yourself through backwards. And when you get to the end, you'll be like, okay, this is something I'm reworking, because it's a behavioral pattern of mine to go to fear first, or go to anger first, or go to anxiety first. Everyone kind of reacts a little differently.
Right.
So finding out how and what your first gut response is super powerful. You figure that out, then you can work backwards from it and remove patterns that aren't benefiting your future. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I have like two things to go off of that. Because like when I go to bed at night, I think this whole podcast is about self, and I really like that. Because I had like a lot of questions, but I like that we went off of that. Like when I go to bed at night, I like to like look back at my day, and some days, and like some days I'm like really stressed out, and I'm like, okay, what happened today? Why did I get stressed out?
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I didn't do something, and so I
Mhm.
know that I have to put it off until tomorrow. That's why I'm stressed out. So tomorrow I'll make sure that I do the thing I need to do today, like that day, and
Yeah.
then I will go to bed happy. And so it's just like different things you like talk to yourself through. And you're talking to yourself. People make it sound weird, but it's really like it's the
Mhm.
person you're with for the rest of your life. Like
Oh,
I don't know yourself.
yes, yes,
Like,
yes, yes. Snaps.
you're
Snaps.
so like important to talk to yourself. And I think talking positively to yourself is like most important. I've really worked on this like the past like few years is just talking positively to yourself and like loving yourself. I feel like a lot of people like say like self love and self love, and then it's also just like their only self love is their skincare routine and stuff like that. And it's like okay, you truly loving yourself, and like to love yourself, you have to have hard conversations with yourself.
Oof.
You have to sit down and be like, okay, why am I not where I want to be? Why am I feeling like a failure? Why am I like all those things? And
Yeah.
not just like you're doing great, you're doing okay. It's okay to
Oh,
hit the snooze. It's okay. Like you are doing okay. You're trying your best. No, be like I'm hard on myself. I'm like you hit the snooze. Like we are not doing that again tomorrow because I love you enough that I am going to make you do something hard.
yes.
And so I think that's like super important. And yeah, just finding that pattern of like, okay, why did I feel bad today? Like what happened? I think that happens a lot in relationships is they
Mhm.
don't know the pattern of the other person. And so then it like kind of fails because they're like, why are they treating me like this? Like, why is this? And like talking to them about their patterns. I feel like communication is so important, whether it's
Super,
with yourself or with somebody else, because you
super.
can't expect somebody else to and like watching other people's patterns, especially with friendships. I feel like this has been really important to me is like watching my friendships because who you surround yourself with is who you will start to become.
Yeah.
And so as I like become the person I want to become, I've lost a lot of friends because their patterns weren't matching up to who I'm going to be in the future.
Hmm.
What my future patterns are going to look like. And I think
Hmm.
that's super important. And like as a teenager, a lot of people are dating at my age, and I'm like, okay, that's fine. Like if you guys want to date, you date. But there are like certain people that you'll be like friends with, and they'll like you, and then like okay, your patterns are not showing somebody that I want to be married
Right.
to.
Totally.
And that's like a hard part to be like, cause people say you're like rude, you're like, oh, you're being rude and judgy. And so okay, I'm not trying to be rude. You don't have to be rude. You don't have to be judgy about it. You can just be like, that's my
You can
boundary.
set whatever boundaries you want for your
Mhm.
life. Don't let anybody else tell you where your judgment is or non-judgment, because they're judging themselves without them knowing.
Right.
Even in fact, by them telling you that you're judgmental, they're judging you. Yeah. So
Right.
it's kind of like,
Exactly.
hey, that's kind of weird. You're doing it right now with me, So what do you
Yeah.
mean? Are you air of non-judgment? No,
Yeah.
wonderfully done. And that's something that you'll experience the rest of your life. As an adult, myself, like, choosing a relationship is very, very hard. I'm proud of you for your at your age understanding that and not getting lost in that fray, because I think a lot of people do get lost in that fray at an early age, which is awesome.
Yeah.
I got so much here. You kind of unloaded a bomb here, and
Sorry.
we're gonna pull the pin. No, don't be sorry at all. This is absolutely phenomenal. I think number one, I'm gonna take a quick video here just for my
Oh
IG
yeah.
because it's so good. Because nothing like throwing this on the stories, so we need that before
Absolutely.
things. We're going, oh yeah, with Rose here podcasting. One of the smartest teens I've ever met. You are full throttle, young lady. You. All right, here we go. We're going in. Okay, so we did talk about self a lot, and I think it's awesome. Here's my
Yeah.
quote that I love. Ready? Selfishly selfless, or selflessly selfish. You
Mm.
know, I think I used to have this posture of the heart of like I still do servant leadership. I still have a servant's heart. I love serving others, but I learned this quote of being selfishly selfless or selflessly selfish,
Mhm.
and I think what it does is like it puts you in a position to understand that by you being selfish, you're actually being selfless.
Yeah.
If you pour into yourself, then you can pour into others. A lot of people pour from an empty bottle. You have
Mhm.
to first fill up your bottle in order to then be able
Yes.
to pour out to others, period. End of story, game
I talk
over.
about that a lot. Yeah.
You have nothing to pour out otherwise, right?
Mhm.
So I think talking about self is incredibly important, because if we learn to manage that, then game on. You can serve the world in such a beautiful way. You can really go be God's hands, feet, mouth, eyes, wallet if you want to be. I believe in being God's wallet. I believe like wallet had Jesus had a purse at some point, right? So like there had to be some sort of wallet to pay for things. So who is that? I think there's some people that are really good at that and using their gifts to serve monetarily. So I think the most important conversation, you said communication. I think communication is key to our existence. I'm going to get really, can we get weird for a moment? I'm going in. Yeah. Okay, great. I believe that, God seeded us as this beautiful species, right? So here we are, big bang, it's hard for me to believe, that something happens from nothing. There had to be a snap of a finger, a push of something had to happen, he had to be like, something had to happen in order for this to all exist. If he painted it by hand or if it just happened, right? Cool. Let's imagine we're 60, 70,000 years ago. We're walking through a savannah, and we need to find, some food. Well, it's you, me, and Malcolm walking down a road, right? So Malcolm would have to eat some grapes, and I'd have to eat some grapes. He eats the blue ones, I eat the red ones. Well, I pass out, and you guys end up eating the blue ones because they're safe. Cool. In communication, it has helped us hyper evolve because then we can go, like good, bad, positive, negative, like grapes, cool. I digress. We move forward. You have what's called the tribal leader. We sat around fires and told these stories, and that's where myth and lore came from, and all these like different types of stories that we learned that were really just to teach people lessons, to the next generation. Cool. I digress. So we sat around fires. Well, they started getting manipulated over time. You're like, what's reality? So then you have someone got smart and said, I'm going to write it on a wall. And we have, pictographs. And you're like, whoa. Then someone said, we're going to carry this with us. And they like broke it off the wall. And then you have the 10 Commandments on a tablet, stone tablets, and you're like, oh. Papyrus paper comes out. Communication has been something that has gone on and evolved over time, continuously. Papyrus paper came out, and there was a whole group of people that thought, papyrus paper is dumb. Look how flimsy this stuff is. Like it falls apart. It's no good. Look at stones. We've chiseled in stone the last 100 years of our life. Well, when's the last time you chiseled anything? Like it just doesn't happen anymore, unless it's on a trophy. So, I say that in a sense of, communication keeps evolving. And then you have things like, the printing press. And the printing press came out and people were like, this is no good. The written hand is so beautiful. Like we're going to lose the touch and flavor of words. And then the printing press now, when was the last time you read something that wasn't written by your own hand? Like, a note maybe, or a sticky note or something, Then we have, the typewriter to the laptop to computer, now ChatGPT AI tools, like it is just hyper evolving communication, I say that because I think it's really important for us, even though what we're talking about this realization of self wasn't around 100 years ago.
Right.
Like if you said to somebody 100 years ago, like, I have a voice in my head that tells me every morning that I should snooze my alarm. They'd be like, burn her, she's crazy. She's talking to herself. She's got the crazies, like even this understanding of our own communication is an evolution of self, so continue asking those deep questions because they're very beautiful. Do not stop. Be curious of all things. I think that's the wonder of our brain, is to be able to be curious, God gives us to be as curious as humanly possible and just like, what is reality, So communication, I think, is key for our existence, number one. So that's important. Communication with others, communication in relationship, communication in family, communication with self. If you can communicate to yourself your emotions, how you're feeling, what you're experiencing, and be able to manage those and work through those, you will be a sturdy, grounded individual that will withstand the storm no matter how hard the winds blow, And another one is, being able to communicate your own internal ecosystem outwardly to somebody. Hey, I'm not comfortable with that. I don't like that. Or, hey, I'm actually hungry for this. I'd like to experience that, Like some people will say like, oh, I don't want to be a bother. Well, who told you you're a bother? That's their self-talk, their own conversation internally that's telling them that they're a bother, No one has said it outwardly. They just have that assumption already before they even say anything that stops them from even communicating. So that communication with self, incredibly important, how we talk to ourselves, how we communicate with ourselves, how we, like you said, you better believe tomorrow we're getting up. There are some people, I even catch myself, like, I had a friend that I once climbed a mountain with, and I was climbing and I was like, Reef, you got this. Reef, you're doing awesome. Reef, you're crushing it. And like, Reef, do you just talk to yourself out loud? And I was like, I have to motivate myself because I feel like quitting and I don't want to quit. So I have to keep telling myself to keep going. You have 40% left, Reef. You can do it. Your body wants you to quit. You don't have to quit. So I literally talk out loud to myself. And it motivated them to talk to themselves as well, outwardly. But that positive self-talk. I've also hung out with athletes, pro athletes, that will cuss at themselves, yell at themselves, like, don't be such a, like very aggressive with self. But that's how they've learned the pattern of self-talk to motivate themselves to the highest level. So I think how you talk to yourself and learning how, like that conversation, first, learning that conversation even happens, key. Second, catching how you're talking to yourself and what motivates you to get to that next level, and behaviorally training your brain to make sure that's a positive conversation. What I do is so much rooted in the future generation, like my future kids that aren't here yet, my future wife that I hope to meet one day, like they're so centered in that my thought process is how I talk to myself now is how I'll present to my loved ones, what I will behaviorally condition into them so that they walk the world and they walk amongst themselves. I think that's such a huge responsibility. It takes it away from me, selfish, or, like we said earlier, the person that didn't wake up today, that's in a hospital bed for that reason, I should get up. Same. I should be as good of a steward of my own reality, my own brain, my own heart, my own emotions, my own internal communication, because as I practice that, I'll then example that, right, or pattern that into my youth or the next generation. So that's why I practice that.
Yeah. So there's like two things I got from that, and it's like how you had said, fill up your cup, and like, because I have a good like analogy I think about a lot is like your cup has to be full so you can overflow into other people's cups.
Yes.
But if your cup's half empty, then you're gonna be searching for water from somewhere else.
Correct.
You need to fill yourself up, and then you can overflow. So that's just kind of like what I have with that.
100%. Brilliant. Brilliant. Good on you.
Another thing is that you're talking about like the pattern of, I used to say sorry a lot. Like I'm a big person where I'm like, sorry, I'm a bother. Like, sorry, because I had people in the past who are like, why do you talk so much? Like, why do you text so much? Like all those things.
Sorry.
And that became like a pattern, right? And I was just like, sorry about everything. And it's like I'd ask someone a question and they'd answer, and I'd be like, okay, sorry, I texted. And they're like, they're like, what? And so recently I've stopped saying sorry. I'm like, because like that person is like, I have this like, I'm not being prideful or anything like that, but I'm like, that person is lucky that they got to talk to me. So I'm like, I'm not gonna be sorry because I asked them a question, they answered. They're not sorry that they answered, and I'm like, so I don't need to be sorry that I asked. Right. And so that's like just something I like built off of that. But yeah, it's like, don't be sorry that like maybe somebody else had taught you that you were bothered or something like that. But that doesn't mean that you are. That's somebody else's reality that's not yours. And so
1000%. Do not adopt someone else's reality to yours unless it betters yours, flat out 100%. That's a good litmus test, Like sorry is another way. Sorry people say sorry. You're not a sorry person, We can say things like, thank you for your patience. Oh, I appreciate you bringing that to my, attention. Oh, you know what? That's something I hadn't observed yet, or, hey, I'm going to put more observation towards that. Those kind of things take it away from the negative lens into an observational lens, which I think is so important. So I think a lot of people sit in the emotions of negativity or bad things happening when really the key is observation, Let me observe what's happening and then take in inventory or data or information and make a more well-articulated decision, So when as that happens, not saying sorry, but rather, I hadn't seen that yet.
Yeah.
Hey, can you explain that to me more? Being curiosity. Can you share with me where that comes from for you? Because it might just be like, well, my mom said this. And it's like, well, I don't need to adopt everything your mom says, or your dad says, like that's crazy, or where did you learn this? Or can you tell me more about that? Like what happens? What are you experiencing when you experience me doing this, having that curiosity to further the conversation, just get more information from somebody, and you'll find that in the way they respond when they say, it bothers me when they're making it about themselves. But if they were to say something along the lines of like, oh, I've observed that in people, this happens, and then their life goes down this trajectory. Now they're caring about you because they're sitting in your frame, what's best for your life, not from their frame, it's interesting. Yeah, very interesting. All very cool stuff.
Yeah. And I only have like, can I? How much time do you have left? Can I have one more question?
Um,
Or not? We
yeah,
can.
I have a 30-minute break right now, so you are, yeah, all bore out. Feel free.
Okay, so my like one question is that if you could talk to yourself at, so I'm 15. If you could talk to yourself at 15, what was the one thing you would say that you're like yourself?
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Holy cannoli, what a great question. Yeah. Um, I think, yeah, let's go deep here. I love going like deep over and over again. Yeah, I want to give your audience or your youth like, yeah, hard truths without it being like all fluffy and meh,
Mhm.
like everything's great. No. Life is hard. Life can be interesting. At 15, I was selling cigarettes, alcohol on weekends. I had already started smoking pot. I was kind of on a weird trajectory in life. Very difficult. Not very difficult, very interesting, a different type of trajectory. Yeah, but it defined me to who I am today. Um, Truth be told, unless someone had shown me an image of me in the future and been like, "Hey, you're gonna struggle in these 10 years, like your 20s to your 30s, heavily because of what you're doing right now," and showed me like a quick like video recap. Um, I was so obstinate or hard headed that I probably wouldn't have listened much to self. So it's kind of hard to go back and have that conversation. um, to have a conversation that probably would have landed for me at that time. It probably would have been telling myself that, hey, all your choices and all your decisions are yours to make. And
Mhm.
whatever you make of them is what it's going to be. I was Catholic at my teens, became Christian after in college. So it was, difficult. I think having someone come to me and share with me, hey, your decisions and your patterns are your reality.
Mhm.
Like, and I think in order for them to do that, they would have had to take me somewhere really rad. Like they would have had to show me the life that I wanted. They had. Like if they would have been like surfing, snowboarding, rock climbing, kayaking, camping, doing all these cool things, having like a truck or something like a Raptor and be like, "Mah," I would have been like, oh, this guy has a life I want. What are you doing? Not some stuffy dude that's like, you should live life like this. And you're like, I don't, dude, I don't want to be like you, dude.
Mhm.
So I think if someone would have had that life that I would have looked forward to and been like, I want that, and then shared what it took for them to get there and what I should look out for myself, I think they would have said, learn that all your decisions and all your choices are yours to make, and your
Yeah.
life is literally the culmination of those choices and decisions. Like remember that. Learn to emotionally regulate. The way you interact with the world is a clear example that you do not know how to emotionally regulate yourself.
Yeah.
You are reactive to the world and you live in chaos. Hence the behavioral patterning as a youth.
Mhm.
I think someone that would have said that to me would have been incredibly, I think that would have been impactful for me. And I think at 15, if someone would have came and said, you can be entrepreneurial, surround yourself with the right people as you're doing, and you've already kind of discerned, that would have maybe changed the trajectory of where I was going because of the people I would have, you know, um, surrounded myself with. Instead, I surrounded myself with some not such good characters. That wasn't good. Um, so yeah, I'd say that would those all those things probably would have helped me wonderfully. But again, talking to me as a youth, I was pretty obstinate. So it would have had to been someone that really like I really admired or looked up to and went like, wow. Now I have a perspective of like, remember, I've learned from you on this call. I have a heart of like I can learn from all people, you
Yeah.
know. Uh, but at that time I was like, no one can tell me anything. Like really hard headed you know. So yeah, I think it would have been interesting to have that. I'd love to try to test having that conversation with my younger self because it's
Mhm.
how do you make a message land in someone's heart. A
Yeah.
message is not spoken word, but in the listened ear. A really good communicator learns how to talk to their audience, so it lands for their audience. If I was my own audience, how would I talk to myself? Oh, that would be a practice for sure. That'd be interesting. I would love to do that if I could. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's all I really have. Do you have anything else you want to share? You.
No, you're awesome. Yeah, I love what you're doing here. I think this is so cool. I think more people need to know about this freaking podcast. Especially for the youth. Like, it's a great conversation to be had. I'm gonna promote you to as many circles as I can and see if I could bring some cool entrepreneurs your way. Busy
Yeah.
Gold, I'll introduce you to. She's absolutely
Yeah.
amazing. Great,
I need
great.
more guests. So hook me up with some people, and I'd love to
Good
have
on
more.
you. Yeah, then get your mom, you, and I on a three-way, either WhatsApp
Yeah.
or Instagram would be great. And then from there, I can start kind of flooding you people, kind of like I'm doing with a teen mastermind. Same
Yes.
thing, kind of draw people in there. Nate is really cool. He's, oh my gosh, yeah, Jacques Spitzer. Like I'm just thinking of all these people that would
Yeah.
just be awesome for your, awesome for your podcast. It should be really good. Yeah. Um, yeah, absolutely wonderful human beings that are living great lives and are great family people that really want to make the world a better place. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being on and talking to us and just giving us your opinion on everything.
You're welcome. I'm trying. I'm putting in my best effort. And if you see anything that could be better through that, please feel free to share it because I'm always willing to learn and grow,
Awesome. Thank you, and thank you for all the listeners, and I hope everybody has a good day.
Let's you all be good. Bye now. You.